Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the National Education Union Support Members Zoom meeting. And for many of you, it will be towards the end of what has probably already been a very long Monday. So absolutely welcome here, and thank you so much for joining us at this time of day. Mike is right. My name is Amanda Martin. I'm the President of the National Education Union, and I'm going to chair tonight's meeting. And before I do that, I want to give you an overview of some housekeeping. So first of all, I need to let you know that this webinar this evening is recorded, and the questions and the chat are also saved, as all three of those help us to provide the information and the support that goes out to you after these meetings. So we go back and check over and if we've missed anything from there. So just need to let you know that. A behaviour code has been posted in the chat. It's the NEU behaviour code, and it's the code that we like you to adhere to during our online meetings. We are, as Mike said, in a webinar format, which means you'll only see the panelists that are speaking. You won't see yourselves, and you may well see some boxes with National Education Union written on, or people's names. They are the tech team that are helping to run this evening's event. But we do absolutely want you to participate. So there are two ways you can do that this evening. One is the way that many of you have found already, which is to write in the chat hellos, asking for links. As Mike said, ask for technical assistance throughout this meeting this evening. If there's anything that's referred to, those links will be posted in there to let you know, and so you can copy and paste and have a look at those yourselves as well. But also please feel free to make comments if this is helpful, if there's anything further we can do for you. As I said, we do use this information. The other way that you can participate this evening is through the Q&A button. So that's questions and answers. If you want to ask one of our panelists a question, if it's a specific panelist, you can put their name down. If not, I as the chair will offer it to the panelists anyway. And what I'd like you to do is to put your name and where you're from in the questions, and they will be fed through to me as chair. I've mentioned our tech team a couple of times. Tonight's tech team are Marie, Vin, Richard, Mike and Henry, and our signer this evening is Dee Simpson. So welcome very much you, because without them we wouldn't be able to keep this meeting going. Before we start and introduce your executive seat holder, Tracy McGuire, I'm just going to give you a brief overview on where the union are at with the recovery plan. Some of you may have seen this in the local press, and I'm going to talk briefly about the recovery plan, but also about the summer holiday offer the union are asking. Now, we are the National Education Union, and very much of what you've seen over the last so many months since lockdown has been what I would call the reactionary side of our National Education Union. So we're reacting, we're firefighting, we are trying to help members when the government make announcements and don't put out information and don't put out the money that they put that come with the ideas and the projects that they have. So very much the union's been pushing on those. We've pushed on the science, we've pushed on protecting vulnerable members, we've pushed on our 5 key tests, we've pushed on the checklists that have been going on in school. But in the background, we've been doing a great deal of work on what should education look like when we come out of this, or as we come in towards September, particularly with a recovery plan. We have asked the government, and the government have said to us publicly that we should act, the trade unions in England should act like they do in other countries. So we are acting like Denmark and Scotland have acted, and we've put together a 10-point strategy plan for education. It's a recovery plan. The word catch up is something we in the union don't think should be used, because if we start using the word catch up and the connotations that go with that, many of you working with vulnerable and disadvantaged kids will absolutely know that catch up, and they're always feeling very far behind already, and that's not a good way to start. So we want to be positive, and we've got a 10-step plan. I'm not going to go into massive detail, but we will take questions on them. But in our 10-point plan, we want it to be disadvantaged children and young people to be the first and the key priority in this. The union stood beside those, and as I've just said, many of you as support staff will be working, you know, really at the point with these young people all of the time in education, the settings that you're working in. We've also pushed for free school meals so free school meals across the summer for all. We've won that argument. We were massively helped by Marcus Rashford. I mentioned on a previous NEU Zoom meeting that it was his aunt who was in the NEU, but actually it's his stepmum that's in the NEU and a member of Manchester NEU. So we're in great company there. But it shouldn't have taken a footballer to do that. But the NEU was pushing for that previously before that. We've also asked, and this is the point I'll come to in more detail, is some local authority funding around a summer holiday offer. And what we mean by a summer holiday offer is not for schools to be organising that. It may well be in school buildings. In my own local authority for many, many years, as first into education, I worked myself in one of them. We have holiday clubs and we sometimes use school buildings. That does not mean we are asking local authorities to use school staff unless they want to pay them, unless those staff want to be doing that. We also are looking at requiring and requisites of public buildings, so libraries, community centres. If we've got a small rural school in a village and we've got a community centre that's attached to it, we'll be asking to use those kind of buildings. Yes, we need to do health and safety risk assessments. Yes, we'll need to check on safeguarding. But if we are to expand education for more pupils, we need to have larger buildings. Our schools and classrooms are not equipped to have even 15 kids at social distancing. And even if we move to social distancing of 1 metre, we're still going to be short of space. So we're looking at those. We're also looking to encourage those that have left the profession to come back, like the nurses. And when we talk about that, when we look at the nurses that the government asked to come back, it wasn't set nurses, it was people across the National Health Service. So we have said qualified teachers, but obviously if you've been in a school and they have people that have retired and they know that person that wants to come back and support, if they're a support worker, that's what we're asking. People that the kids know, people that know education. We've also been working really closely so those in secondary schools that are supporting pupils in there with the qualifications agency Ofqual around looking at what do we mean when children come back, what education are those young people going to be working towards. So we're asking them to give us some really quick guidance on what exams and what that format will look like when we come to next year. It was okay to do it once, to allow for teacher assessment in the ad hoc way it happened. The NEU is pushed for that way of assessing, but it's not okay to do that now. And with so many of you working and supporting in secondary and supporting alongside, you need to know what it is you're supporting these pupils to be learning. Are you supporting them to be learning with regards to the GCSEs as they were, or are we looking to have some kind of different style of learning? And that brings us into our point 7, which is blended learning. We absolutely need a plan on blended learning in the union. And that means pupils and young people being in school for some of the time and potentially being at home. And if we are to have home learning, the 8th point we need to do is to make sure that those pupils have access to the technology. So not just the hardware in laptops, but also with regards to free internet access, books, creative packs, writing. I know many, many schools have been delivering those out to their pupils, but we need a plan. We need a government plan on that and the funding to go behind it. And it's very interesting. Any of you that work in the sixth form sector, you might not be aware that the grants that have come with regards to laptops and computers and even the free school meals do not adhere to colleges. Sixth form colleges do not count in that. So they are also under more funding pressure. So we need to be looking at how we solve that. And child poverty is our 9. And we're going to realise that many, many of our families, the people that we're working with, the people that we have daily contact with, will be in dire straits right now, and they may well be needing further support. And we want the government to absolutely recognise that. And our 10th point in our plan is a national children's plan for their mental health and well-being. We absolutely want that embedded in the curriculum. And to me, working in a school for 22 years, I know that when we embed things in the curriculum, we need everybody on board in school, from the secretaries that greet our kids the first thing in the morning, right the way through to the NQTs that are starting, to the SENCOs, to the support assistants that are working on a one-to-one basis, all with those families that are disadvantaged and in poverty. We need the whole school environment involved in that. So that's absolutely where we are from. And it's a aspirational plan. It's absolutely what our kids deserve. It's what the people that work in our education system deserve. We deserve to know what's happening with regards to our kids and young people and the workplaces that we are in. And it will cost money. And we believe that the government should be funding it along the lines of the job recovery programme. So yes, we're asking for money, but absolutely we should be, because this is unprecedented times. And in order to make sure that the people that we work with and the people that we teach and the students that we support are absolutely COVID isn't a reason for them to be failing. We have to look at how we can make sure this government are supporting as we go forward. And I'm just going to give a small amount of detail on what we're calling a local offer for children. So a summer holiday 2020, a local offer for children and young people. Now, like I said, I'm based in Portsmouth, and we have run holiday clubs for many years. We involve Portsmouth in the community, which is linked to our football club. We involve various charities. And that's what we're saying. We are asking for funding to come to local authorities so they can do an audit on what local providers already offer, on what can be provided, and what staffing needs to be resourcing. And we need that to be very clear, because like I said at the outset, this isn't a case for, and I'm thinking around support assistance particularly, if you're on a contract that you are being paid for the time you're working in school, you should not be asked to be working in the school holidays. So we need to make sure, unless you are paid, unless you are volunteering, we may have some people in the education sector. I have in my school particularly, we have an Easter holiday club, and we do have support staff who offer to volunteer, but they get paid. We do have NQTs who offer to volunteer, and they do get paid. So we need to make very sure that this audit happens in our local authorities, that schools can be involved as much as they are. But the reason we're doing this is we know what this government are like. And we will get 2 or 3 weeks down the line, and then they will start talking about holiday education and about holiday catch up. And we need to make sure that we've put it out there. This isn't about catch up. This is about kids being given the chance to do sports, to do creative activities, to play with other children, but also to make sure it's done in the correct way with risk assessments in an environment that is safe. So that's an outline of our 10-point plan and some more detail around our summer holiday offer. And local offer is exactly what it should be. And I'm going to hand over to you now to your very brilliant executive seat holder, who has lots of knowledge around this, who has had lots of information and questions coming from you. So I'm going to hand over to Tracy McGuire. Thank you, Tracy, this evening.
Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome. It's really good to have so many of you on this call again. I just want to say I'm sorry. I apologise for the short notice of the meeting, and we will endeavour to get that sorted next time and give everybody more notice for this. So thanks for taking part tonight. So I just want to say how brilliant I think support staff have been through this whole this period, and I think it's very apparent that we are, 100% part of this union now, because if we look at the figures for support staff at the moment, we've gone from around 29,000 members at the time of Boris Johnson's announcement to over 38,800, which I think it's amazing. And I think that, we're about sort of on 10% of the membership, which, for us is phenomenal. And it's great. And we want to kind of continue that. And the reasons for that is that we are the union that has been providing answers throughout this whole episode, and we are the ones that have gone out actively and tried to do things for our members. So I think that's great, and there's absolute strength in numbers, and I think that's what's been shown. Amanda's kind of gone through quite thoroughly the holiday plan and also sort of the recovery plan, but I just want to say that I'm a safeguarding lead in my school, and I think that it's excellent that what's come out, because I'd like to say why, because I think that we have to have some eyes on our vulnerable children over this holiday period. As support staff, many of us work one-to-one with these children, and we know more than probably anyone else, like what these children experience on a day-to-day basis, and I think we go through a normal 6-week holiday period worrying about these children, and we've gone through this amount of time, and what we need to do is it's right, we need to it's not catch up, we need to try and restore these children their confidence. We need to make summer fun for them. That's exactly what needs to happen. I've been ringing my local authority just about on a daily basis to, you know, badger them and find out what's going on. And I think we all need to kind of keep that pressure up, because we're talking about our kids' lives at the end of the day. So in terms of, support staff over the holidays, I think that a lot, obviously it is voluntary if people go in, we've made that position very clear. And I think that also if people go in, they should be paid appropriately for that. And, you know, we're looking as well at our supply staff members who've been without work during this period. So, you know, if they were, you know, to be brought in to staff community centres or whatever, then that's a really brilliant thing, and we should be absolutely for that. Equally, for those staff who don't want to work and who need to break, you know, we need to just be absolutely supportive of that. Nobody should be in a position where they are made to feel that they have to work over this holiday. It's time for all staff to recharge their batteries and spend time with their families as well. And I think that's really, really important. I think that we've got to recognise the fact that many of our support staff members have been in school for most of the time. So non-classroom based staff have, you know, our office staff members who've been sorting out free school meal vouchers, our premises staff, cleaning staff, our kitchen staff have been working, you know, this whole time. And I think that, you know, many of these staff already are over the contracted hours, and those staff who were not term time only are owed holidays. And I think that's important to mention because it's certainly something that's come up locally and something that's come up in my school. So if staff in your school are owed holidays, and because of the school year, they're not entitled to sort of take them because they may be required on site, then they are paid for this and they need to be paid appropriately for this. So look, I just want to, I want to sort of get to questions and answers because I want people to sort of have their input into this, but I just want to say that I'm absolutely passionate about support staff members in this union, and I truly believe that we are a union for all education workers, and that's where I want to be. Amanda will back me up on this. I know that she knows that I'm very passionate about this, and it's something which in our executive briefings that I constantly talk about, because we are a union for all workers. If you are in the school building or if you are in the education setting, you are in our union, and I think that's very, very important. And I think that, you know, going forward from this, we represent some of our lowest paid workers in our schools, and throughout this we have been the workers who have kept our schools together, and I think that needs recognising going forward. So I'll hand you back over to Amanda. Thank you.
And thank you, Tracy. Really informative there. And also, you know, absolutely, Tracy defends, which is why I said she was brilliant at the start, defends her constituency and make sure that the union are held to account, and making sure we're using them and commenting and involving and making sure our policies are aligned with support members of staff. So thank you very much. I've got Andrew Morris, who is the Assistant General Secretary for Bargaining and Negotiations. And I've also got Peter Morris, they're not related. I've got Peter Morris on here as well, who is the National Officer who provides support for support staff. They're not going to come in and comment, but they are here to answer the questions alongside Tracy this evening. So I just wanted to introduce both of those those so you can know who they are when I bring them in. We're having a number of questions that are coming through are specific casework questions, which we may be able to cover in an overview, but we won't be able to give specific information. At the end, I'll just let you know where you can go to for that and where you can get some further information from if we don't answer your question on here. So I've got 4 questions coming in straight away. The first one is from Nathan. Any idea how things might be approached regarding possible plans to have staff come back in the middle of August? I've got Karen. Support staff are still being asked to clean toilets in many settings and too afraid to say no. What is the NEU advice on this? And Elizabeth, question here about sports. Support staff pay in the negotiations that are going on. What are we doing as a union to support our support staff with regards to pay progression, and what can we do as a whole to get our voice heard on this key and important thing for many of our members? And then Sharon asks, who are you expecting to attend summer schools? I'm exhausted and so are my kids. Thank you, Sharon. Shall I come to you first, Tracy?
Yeah, so just the plans for August, I think I had kind of outlined that earlier. No one's should be required at all. It's voluntary. You are paid. If you volunteer, you are paid. If you are being coerced into coming to school, then you need to speak to your local rep, or I'm happy for you to get in touch with me. It's an absolute sort of no. In terms of, cleaning duties, if you are, as many of us that are members of this union are some of us are cleaning staff. If you are cleaning staff then, and that's within your job role, then that's what you're expected to do, and you have the correct PPE for that. I just do want to mention something. There is a school actually in Southwark at the minute where the cleaners have been denied adequate PPE. It's been brought to my attention in the last few days, and they have been, the agreement with that is that they've been told that if they are provided with the adequate PPE, that the deal on that is that they must leave their union, which it is being dealt with at the moment. So that's something which our cleaning staff are facing and is outrageous. But if your role is classroom based and you shouldn't be expected to perform those duties, no. So can I just hand over to our Andrew to answer the others? Is that okay?
Yes, please. Andrew, thank you. Thanks, Tracy.
Hi, everybody. Good to see so many people on the call, although that does show that there are still so many concerns about what's going on at the moment. Just say briefly on the issue of summer working. I mean, we're going to defend everybody's right to get rest in the summer and not be pushed into working beyond their contractual requirements. If you want the rest, then we will make sure you get one. If you're not going anywhere on holiday and you want to get involved in the summer offer, then we really hope that you would do that as well, because we think that's going to be really important for all of the students in order to prepare them for going back to school in the autumn. I think if there's anybody out there who's working on a supply basis, then clearly the summer offer is going to be a really good opportunity for those of you who work on a supply basis as well. And we hope that that will be a reality soon.
Thank you, Andrew. And Peter, did you want to add anything further to those 4 questions?
Yeah. Number 2, Karen Parkin mentions the issue around cleaning toilets and people being afraid to say no, and we totally understand that. I mean, the NEU advice is that cleaning is a function for the cleaners. Therefore, if it's a duty that the cleaner would normally carry out, then that should still be the case even now, even in these extraordinary circumstances. I mean, I know it's easy to say that, and as Karen quite rightly said, a lot of people are being put under a lot of pressure in all sorts of unusual circumstances. So you really do need then to talk to your rep or your district secretary to say, look, the school are trying to push us into doing something which we shouldn't be doing. you know, unless you're a cleaner, as Tracy has quite rightly made the point, you know, then it is your job. So, so that is the NEU position on that. Elizabeth raises the issue about support staff pay and the negotiations that are going on. Hot off the press news is that the employers in the state sector, so this is going to be the vast majority of state schools and academies, has made a final offer of 2.75% as of the 1st of April just gone. The local government unions, who are the unions who lead on those negotiations, are consulting their members at the moment. We've got our Support Staff National Council, and it will be giving the matter its own consideration on, I think it's Thursday, when it's due next to have a discussion. So we'll be looking to see what sort of influence and impact we can have on those discussions. And Sharon Law, is that Sharon from Redbridge? I think it is. Sharon, who are you expecting to attend summer schools? I'm exhausted in summer, because, well, we're not expecting anybody to do anything they don't want to do. So let's be absolutely clear on that. That's the NEU view. But as Andrew has said, it may be an opportunity for many members to earn some money. And the principle, as all the speakers have stressed, is if you work, you get paid. So if you're not contracted to work in the school holidays, then the school have to pay you the appropriate rate. And more information on that can be found on the NEU website.
Thank you. And I want to echo the words that everyone has said, actually. And one of the key things around cleaning the toilets, around opening up with summer holidays, wherever that is risk assessment. And in your risk assessment, it should say who is doing that cleaning, how many times that cleaning is going on. And it shouldn't therefore have support staff members listed on there. There should be cleaners, because that is their job, and they should have been trained and have the correct equipment that's needed. So absolutely, it should be on a risk assessment, and that is there to help back you up. So thank you very much. Okay, I've got 4 more questions. I've received a letter that I'm part of the extremely vulnerable. I work in the school office all year round. From today's announcement, so just literally minutes ago, it seems I'll be expected to go back in from August the 1st. We don't need to go back in full time, as in full hours and days. And what happens in September, and when more people are in and there's a chance of increased risk. So that's a really topical one that's just come out today. Claire has asked, if school buildings are to be open for summer holiday provision, then who will open these up and look up afterwards? Our premises manager has worked so hard over the past months. He needs a well-earned rest too. So do all the staff and school cleaners. And Leiden, hello panelists. My name is Leiden. I work at St Anne's in Ealing. The government are set to announce a reduction in the social distancing rule from 2 meters to 1 meter. How is this going to impact on schools? And then Beverly asks, do you know when to expect the next steps to be available? We are in the last 4 weeks of term, and our students are getting anxious of how September looks. A lot of those students are SEN and are already struggling with the upheaval of school and life since March. I'm going to come to you first, Andrew.
Thanks, Amanda. So the announcement today is going to be followed by some guidance directly from the DFE, which they'll be issuing in the course of the next week or so. We've got a very clear line on what's being said, which is that we don't know what the situation is going to be in September. Those who've been told until now to shield for their own safety are going to feel very uncertain about returning to the workplace. So we will expect education employers to be willing to plan with us, on the basis that at least some staff and some students may need to remain at home in September. What they've said is that the advice to the clinically extremely vulnerable is going to be brought in line with the current advice for the clinically vulnerable. And the advice for the clinically vulnerable is not, you can go back to work. It is hedged around with the need for there to be safety for you and your particular circumstances to be taken into account. So we've issued advice fairly recently about the position of at-risk staff, and all of this applies just as much to your families as to you, because we don't want you to be put at risk of either falling ill yourself or taking the virus home to your family. So we will expect every employer to continue, as we're saying now, to carry out an individual risk assessment that looks at your personal position, what they're expecting you to do. Somebody on the chat has mentioned the difference between working outdoors and working indoors. That's fair enough. Those matters need to be taken into account as well. Matters of age and ethnicity and the like. It isn't just a matter of your medical condition, it's everything else that surrounds you and your family. And you do need to be assured that it's safe for you and them for you to be back at work. And if you need to be working at home in September, then we will support you to try and secure that.
Thank you. Peter.
Okay, shall I have a go at the next couple? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Right, if school buildings to be open for some holiday provision, then who will open these up and lock up afterwards? And Claire Edwards goes on to talk about the premises manager. I mean, the premises manager and premises staff generally in schools are going to be on 52-week contracts, all year round contracts anyway, it's my understanding. So they will still be entitled to take their annual leave as normal and still have a break. So it shouldn't be an issue as such. They shouldn't be dumped upon and be told, oh, you've got to come in for the whole 6 weeks, etc., etc. But again, as we always say, if there's an issue there, then people need to talk to their rep and push back on it. There shouldn't be an issue, but there could well be. The next, so one from Lyndon is about the government is set to announce a reduction in social distancing from 2 metres to 1 metre. How is this going to impact on schools? Well, that's a rather speculative question, isn't it? What I don't think it will do is it will solve the issue of September and trying to bring back whole classes, because 1 metre is going to be no more practicable than 2, really, I would have thought, in depending on the size of the classroom, obviously, but that's going to be an issue. And the last one, Beverly, do we know when to expect the next steps to be available? We're in the last 4 weeks of term, and a lot of students, SEN students, are struggling with the upheaval, which is absolutely correct. Again, I don't know if any of the other panelists want to comment on that one. Again, it's rather speculative because there's still a lack of clarity from the government as to what exactly they're aiming for.
Thank you, Peter. And Tracy, did you want to pick up on anything that Andrew and Peter have missed or add to?
Yeah, so just, I think Andrew sort of explained the vulnerable situation like really fully. So on the premises manager, we've got a situation, and I spoke to Peter today about this. We've got a situation locally with me, with a school, it is a problem because what we're looking at is premises staff that have been on site for much of the time, and they do need to take their holidays. So I think that's why as a union we're obviously pushing for community centres to be open and to be to be staffed by other workers kind of coming in, because quite rightly, as you said, that that premises manager needs a break because they've done above and beyond to sort of help the school and the community out. In terms of the situation in September about the reduction from 2 metres to 1 metre, and I think that's why we're kind of we're still as a union still asking for it to be safe. We're still sort of saying that we want it to be safe. We need the science. We need if you're going to put 30 kids in a classroom, can you tell us that will be safe to do, basically, which kind of links into the next question about the next steps. We want this advice as soon as possible because the knock-on effect of that is, I was speaking to my head teacher today, so head teachers are waiting for that advice because it's been coming through at the last minute for them as well, at all sorts of stupid o'clock hours or whatever. They're getting this information, and then what happens is us as reps then need to deal with that. So basically the heads get the information, they send out the risk assessment, and then we have to, you know, go through all of that. So basically, we need those details as soon as possible, because at the end of the day, if the government is saying in 2 weeks' time that we're going to get that information, well, then heads have got to go through it. We don't want to be working over the summer holidays as much as possible as union reps. So, you know, we're absolutely pushing for that, and I think we should be. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Absolutely. And as Richard has put into the chat, risk assessments are working documents. So should the government decide to go from 2 to 1, we need to adapt our risk assessments. We all know if we go on a school trip, we have to make sure that we know what parents are going, and we give them the risk assessment, what support staff are going, what other members of staff are going. And we have to, it's a working document that needs to be added to and changed and adapted. And that will also be changed and adapted as different children come in and different pupils come in, because some of them may carry their own risk assessment forms that need to be done alongside that. So, but Tracy's also right with regards to the science. The science is changing, and the NEU have never said they're a scientist. We've always said that we have to follow the science. And SAGE scientists, independent SAGE, have actually said, you know, 2 weeks makes a difference. So we need to make sure that we are on top. And the reason we produced our 10-point recovery plan is the government haven't got one. So we've had to put one in place because we're fed up of waiting for them to do one. Okay, I've got some more questions. Carolina, what do you advise to librarians who feel they have to do a noticeable job during lockdown because they feel they might be made redundant after all this time without the library being used? Also, there's quite a large number of school libraries being used at the moment for key staff children. Some have even completely cleared of books and shelves for this purpose. What can librarians do to get some sense of normality and job assurance when they have no work in place? Duncan, hello Duncan, you're from my area. My school is undergoing academisation. What effect will the current crisis have on this? And Duncan's in Portsmouth. And Holly, we only have children coming in and going on computers to do virtual lessons, and we have the full 25% of year 10s and not allowing vulnerable or staff living from vulnerable to stay home. What is the point of going in just to keep an eye on them on things they could do at home? Some students brought in were engaging in lessons. What can we do? Teaching assistants are just going in for the sake of it, as most of our kids are working at home. Could they just do the work at home? And then finally, Jane, what are your views on workload not being shared equally, as some members of staff are back full-time and others with no underlying health conditions have still not returned or are working from home? So I'm going to come to Peter on librarians, then I'm going to come to Tracy and then Andrew. Peter.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. Yeah, Carolina, you talk about librarians not having a noticeable job at the moment, which is we absolutely understand. I mean, librarians are in a almost peculiar situation in this current climate and current context. I mean, I have to say that if a school or an employer were to turn around and try and use the coronavirus epidemic as a reason for pursuing redundancies or shutting a library, then that's a pretty weak and pretty pathetic argument, if you ask me. But anyway, we know these arguments that can often be made. I just think there's one thing you could do. You could, via your rep, if you're not the rep yourself, Carolina, you could talk to management and just get an assurance or the assurances that you want. I mean, I'm always slightly wary in giving that advice because sometimes you can ask a question and then you get an answer you don't want. So you'd need to make that judgment. But I do understand how you feel, and obviously you need to keep in touch with your rep and your districts if things do turn out the way that you fear they might. Thank you, Peter. Tracy?
Sorry, just quickly, just on the librarian situation. I feel that the librarian's role is just so undervalued sometimes, you know, because basically I work in a primary school now. I used to be a TA in a secondary school. Our librarian was the focal point for children in that school in terms of safeguarding referrals, because she was there every single morning. Those children knew that they could go to to her and have a very honest and open discussion. And you know, what's being said by Peter is absolutely right. Like this is not the climate for having any sort of discussions around making, you know, people redundant or restructures or anything like that, full stop. But certainly not to just like somebody who, like, you know, gives such a vital service. I know that other people are going to come in on other answers on TAs working from home, like, you know, that are made sort of feeling like they're coming in unnecessarily. I think that in the first instance, like, have that conversation with your head teacher, because I think that, you know, if you do feel that, you know, there's some TAs in my school that have, you know, basically have come to me and we've had a discussion, and I think that they have been able to work from home for whatever reasons. It could, you know, it could be childcare that they're having issues with or whatever, or it's just, you know, they can be given work to do at home, because let's face it, we've all been working throughout this whole crisis. So it's absolutely, in the first instance, have that conversation with your head teacher. If you feel like you haven't been given a reasonable response, please contact your local rep, or feel free to contact me and we can try and advise you further.
Thank you, Tracy. Andrew, can I bring you in around academies and some of the other points that haven't been covered, please?
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, we're not in favour of academisation proposals proceeding at the moment. Similarly, restructurings and the like, because there is a principle, there's a requirement that there has to be meaningful consultation around changes of this kind, and we do not believe that there can be meaningful collective consultation with staff and with their union representatives at this time. That doesn't stop some employers trying to plough ahead with reorganisation or academisation. Get in touch with your branch and get the branch involved, and hopefully they will be able to put things on hold, or if they're unable to do that, at least make sure that the voice that is had is a proper voice, which means that the employer will soft pedal on any proposals. I noticed that Holly, you asked the question about why are kids coming into school when they could be doing exactly the same things at home, has just posted in the chat that the head teacher presumably is refusing to meet with staff. It doesn't sound like things are going particularly well at that school. If students are going into school, they should be going in for a purpose, and I think we can all agree with that and carry on pushing the head. And workload not being shared equally amongst all members of staff, some being at home, some not at home. This should be covered by the rota. The rota should be being discussed with you, and the rota should make sure that everybody's making a contribution, whether at home or if you have to be in school, but it ought to be a job of work that is fairly shared around between those who can work.
Thank you, Andrew. And I think particularly on that last point, it's often very difficult to know what someone is doing at home, you know, because they're directed normally by the leader of the school, the principal or the head teacher, but equally it's difficult to know what people's personal circumstances to why they are at home. So it is a very difficult situation, but I think for members of staff, it's about making sure that your workload is doable, and if it isn't, having that conversation with your rep. What we don't want to do is have like finger pointing and cause divisions between. We need to just work on to make sure that if your workload is too much, you're having that conversation and making sure that it is absolutely fair. Okay, I've got some more questions. Nick has asked, I would like to let all our support staff know about the NEU. All our support members are classroom based, but as Tracy points out, there is the need to be mindful of admin and IT support staff. How best and what do you suggest I advertise all that the NEU can offer to support staff? So basically, how does she recruit? And I guess we have to be careful around what we say about that, but equally, I'll let you do that one. Alex, how are the decisions being made around blended learning, holiday workings, etc.? Is the NEC meeting, so that's the National Executive Committee, sometimes it feels branches are operating in vacuums despite these Zoom meetings? Laura Ellis, hi from Rugby. What can I do in the school staff are not enforcing the steps from the risk assessment? Senior staff and students are not following any distancing or cleaning, despite bringing this up with the head teacher. So there is a risk assessment in place, but people aren't following it. And Gillian Hayward has asked, hi, support staff are being pressured to send their children, their own children, into school when they don't feel it's safe so they can get into school themselves. They're asking how they stand and will they still have a job? Many are on 12-month contracts. So shall I come to you, Tracy, first this time? Thanks.
Hi, yeah, so Nick, just in terms of the NAU members in your school, like I said, I absolutely believe passionately in all education workers being members of the NAU. I'm the rep in my school as well, and I think just by kind of having a presence and kind of doing good work in your school, that people automatically come to you anyway. Obviously, I'm in favour of recruiting people, but I think that, for example, there's lots of way around stuff. When you've got different workers in the school, I think what you've got to look at is trying to be as inclusive as possible. So, for example, for our lunchtime staff, I went to my head teacher and said to him, look, we have our meetings at 8 o'clock in the morning. Our premises staff and our cleaning staff can come to that. Our TAs can come to it. Our teaching staff can come to it. But for our lunchtime staff, they're not in for those hours. So I've said, like, look, can I have a meeting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when they finish their shift? And you know, I badgered him, and basically the answer was yes. So, you know, basically now we've got those staff, you know, recruited and part of our union, which is exactly what we need to do. So I think just by being active, people come to us. As I said, I'm in favour of recruiting as many people as possible, but people will if you are the rep in the school, and if you are doing stuff, people will join this union. They will. So I think that just another question about support staff being pressured to come in because they've got children in the school. I've had some questions about that recently in my area. You know, at the end of the day, as a parent, you still have the right to send your children to school if you want to, or if you or not, you know, basically. So again, that's a discussion to have with your head teacher. If your head teacher's not being supportive and you feel very strongly about it, again, contact your rep about that, because basically that's one of those discussions about, can you work from home? And that's exactly what, you know, that we're talking about stuff that's reasonable. It's a reasonable demand. And I think that's exactly what the conversation we should be having.
Thank you. And Tracy's right around working with members, particularly if they're not in a union, they can join the NEU. If they are already in another union, then there's nothing to stop you working across unions and together in a school environment, so that everyone is working together in that time. Okay, Peter, I'll come to you.
Okay, shall I have a stab at 3 and 4? That sound good? Yeah. Laura from Rugby. What can I do if the school staff are not enforcing steps from the risk assessment? It's been raised with the head, but nothing's happening. I mean, that's a disgrace, Laura, and that's just not acceptable. What you need to do is, if you've got a rep, again, talk to the rep. If you are, if you're the rep yourself, you need to get the NEU members together, and as Amanda has just said, members of other unions as well. Get something in writing and demand that the head teacher carries out his legal obligations, because that is just not acceptable. And on the final one, on the Gillian and being pressured to send your own kids to school and then to come into school. Well, Tracy's more or less said it, but I would add that this is another example of where we do need people in unions who should get together, who should push back and say, this is not acceptable, the pressure that we're being put under. Yes, the fact that people are on short-term contracts is an issue, and that's obviously a pressure point for the individuals. but they do need to push back on that, because they're being put in a vulnerable situation, and it's not acceptable. So again, if there's a rep at the school, the usual message: let's argue back.
Thank you, and I'll come in and just cover two, because I do chair the OSG, which is the Officer Steering Group, and which is a smaller version of the executive, and it's been acting in emergency capacity as the executive, but we have also had executive meetings to say that the 10-point plan and the various other things that are coming out, for example, the Policy Research Committee, which is a committee that is one of the 5 main committees of the executive, they have been discussing that. They've been discussing the summer plans, and that came out to the executive, and we have committee meeting structures where they can feed into. But the policy was written based on the 10-point plan, and the holiday policy was written on union policy that we'd passed around, not on testing, around supporting disadvantaged, around defending, child poverty, well, not defending, but stopping child poverty, to making sure that we've got equipment in homes, to making sure that education just isn't about SATs and league tables and all of those kind of things. So it was built up around policy, but we're through the Policy Research Committee, and in that way, and it sort of says branch and district sometimes feel they're left on their own. I'm a branch and district secretary, and one of the things I'd advise you to do is we had a conversation around regional offices doing some uniform meetings and making sure that we're having those conversations with branch and district. So if you do feel a bit, you're paddling and needing some more information, please do contact your regional office and ask them, how we can go forward with regards to working together as branch and district secretaries. So that's a really good place to go for that. So thank you to those answers. We've got a few more that are coming through with regards to questions. So I've got an anonymous: I'm a BAME school nursery support staff, shielding an extremely vulnerable family until August. Social distancing is virtually zero in the nursery, which is vital to me. What advice would you give should I be giving notice to leave? So what advice are we giving to our Black members? I know that we've written some really good information out there. Linda has asked, can staff be disciplined by teams? As in, I think you mean the electronic format of Teams, like we're on Zoom. Laura has asked, my school doesn't seem to stick to the 15 people bubble. We have more 40 plus. It's an SEN school and we are different to mainstream. And Claire has asked, so if Tracy said support staff should be paid for the time they were in during the holidays, how do we go about asking for that? I believe more support staff are paid term time only, but we work through Easter holidays and May half terms. Should we be paid all 3 weeks or just the days we worked? And Sarah has said, hi, we've been told today that the extra week of summer term we were going to work for an extra week holiday in October has now been cancelled due to unions kicking up a fuss. Not my words. I personally, along with the majority of my colleagues, would have rather worked an extra week in the summer term and had the 2 weeks off in October. But we aren't asked by the unions. Why was the decision made without contacting members? I don't think that's true, the advice you've been given, but I'll let one of the others come in. So I'll bring you in first, Andrew.
On the last one, I'm not entirely sure what Sarah's picking up on there. We do always hear lots of things that are said by head teachers that don't bear any particular relation to what has been said by the union, such as the unions agreeing that you could work during the Easter holidays without any extra pay. So there's been no proposal at any point from government for there to be a change to the it's in South Wales, sorry, yes.
Oh yeah, sorry, South Wales. My fault, Andrew.
Yeah. Okay, I'm afraid I can't comment directly on that because the discussions in Wales have been going on over the last couple of weeks, and despite being Welsh, I haven't been directly involved in it myself, so I can't comment on that one, I'm afraid. I mean, with regard to the question that was asked particularly about the bubbles in SEN in particular, I think the important point to make here is that where you've got students who are more likely to transmit coronavirus or less likely to maintain social distancing, then the need for precautions and the need for a limit on student numbers is greater, not less. So there's an explicit recognition in the primary schools advice of the limit of 15. There's explicit recognition in the early years advice that bubbles may need to be smaller, no larger than 8. And there is a recognition that the circumstances of special needs students, in particular in many cases, may require PPE to be provided to the members of staff working with them. So clearly there's absolutely no justification for any head teacher presuming that it's okay to have larger bubbles in a special needs setting than in a primary setting. So that ought to be strongly resisted. And fundamentally, if this and other similar cases, if you've got a problem, then raise it through your rep, raise it with the support of your colleagues, or raise it with the support of your district and branch with the head teacher. Don't just put up with it. Make sure that you make a response and make a collective response through and with the support of your union.
Thank you. Peter.
Okay. Linda has asked that can staff be disciplined by teams? I'm assuming, Linda, that this is not a hypothetical question, that this is something that's been mooted or has actually happened. Perhaps you could email me tomorrow. Linda's on our Support Staff National Council, so I know her, so it might be easier to take that one offline. Short answer is I want to think about it. I suppose in theory it could happen, but it's rather unorthodox to say the least. I think the point's been made on also for the anonymous attendee about the nursery, the support staff member social distancing. Same for Laura about it with the SEN context and social distancing or bubbles just being not being adhered to or not being workable. Risk assessment should have been done. They should have covered these points. So that's really the way to go. Also talk to your NEU rep or your NEU district, because you are both in a situation that is that we're really unhappy about. And let's just talk about this business about Claire Turner has raised again the issue that's been raised with all of us over the last few weeks about payment if for working through school holidays. Now, if you're paid term time only, you're on a term time only contract as opposed to a 52-week all year round contract, then you will be paid for a number of weeks, normally 39 weeks for when the school's open, plus a prorated amount of your contractual entitlement to annual leave. So what that means in practice is that most of you on term time only contracts will be paid for something like 44 to 46 weeks a year. And that money is spread over 12 equal instalments to make sure you get some money in August. So what that means is that the school can expect you to work during the 39 weeks, but they cannot dictate to you during holidays that you have to work. But what has happened, clearly, given the postbag that we've had, is that all around the country, schools have just said, well, it's a crisis, come in the Easter holidays, come in May half term, come in for bank holidays. I was talking to somebody the other day. That is not acceptable because you are not being paid. And in fact, it's voluntary. So not only should they pay you and you should claim retrospectively, but it is voluntary. So going into the summer period, they cannot make you come in. And that's the important principle. But go onto the website. There's lots of stuff on there. I think I said at the last one, you may recall, go right down to the bottom of the home page, click on support staff, and you'll find lots and lots of information as to the rights and wrongs, and push back on it. Please, everybody, if you work during Easter and half term, you're on a term time only contract and you didn't get paid, you must go back and ask for the money, because the precedent that is set could come back to bite you and many other people in the future, and that is something that we certainly wouldn't want.
Thank you. And Tracy?
Yeah, just quickly on that. Look, I think obviously Peter's going to deal with this. The disciplinary by teams, it's not good practice. At the end of the day, we're not in favour of staff going through restructuring and redundancies you know, via virtual meetings. We're not in favour of this. It's just, you know, it's not good practice at all. But I'll let Peter come, you know, deal with that and come back to that. So the 15 people in a bubble and that being kind of pushed out, you know, it's absolutely, you know, it's just wrong, you know, and it needs to be absolutely challenged. So please, you know, do sort of, you know, contact again, like get together as a union in your school and challenge that, because it's just, your risk assessment then is being sort of called into question on that, and you know, it's just not right. So, and just on nursery, and I mean, this comes down to a fundamental point, I think, by the union and you know, social distancing. That's why we were not in favour of this in the first place, because we know that it's difficult for children in that situation to be able to social distance. I think that, I mean, my school, you know, basically turned around and would not, apart from key workers children and vulnerables, have not opened to nursery or reception, because we think it'd cause young children trauma, that, you know, when you're telling them that they can't play with other children. So, you know, just coming from that point of view, that, you know, it's just an awful situation to be in. It really, really is. And that's why we've done our best as a union to argue against that. And, you know, just to agree with everything that Peter said, basically, about the holidays and being paid or, you know, having agreed time, you know, time off in lieu. Absolutely.
Thank you. And we've reached 7 o'clock. So that hour went so very quickly. I just wanted to say, with regards to the Wales information, we'll go back and have a look and see if the announcements have changed from the government, because they were talking around having a 2-week October half term, because they're planning and expecting for a potential second wave, that or a second spike. That was the thinking around that. So we will have a look. With regards to disciplinaries and moving forward, many of the what's called joint consultative committees would have begun those discussions with local authorities, because I know other unions are pushing to begin to move forward with procedures as we go forward. The NEU's advice up till now has been safeguarding concerns have to go ahead, but everything else should be on pause at this point in time. And I just want to flag up a couple of things. There is on our website Black educators and vulnerable workers checklists for you to go through, and for you to check that you are absolutely being protected if you fall into those categories. From there, they run alongside our checklists that are in school, and you should have a look. There are some support letters some letters of support to help you to write to your head should you be in that category. And I guess for me, a union is a union. And Tracy said, if you're in the building, you're in the union. We are the National Education Union. And I always say that the union should be the family that you choose to join. Do not ever feel you're alone. You are in a union with nearly 500,000 members. We are growing. You just heard from Tracy at the start, the support section is growing. There are various routes into working with the union, which is around through Tracy, through your regional offices, through your local branch and districts, but also on the back of your membership card is a name and a contact person for you to contact if you don't have a school rep. So thank you so much for your time. It's always really great to hear the questions. We will save them. Some of our videos are posted on our YouTube site, so please subscribe to that, and take care, and thank you very much. Thank you.